They thought I was just the quiet wife in the background. My husband left me for his boss, a billionaire who had everything. But what they didn't know? She'd been planning something nobody saw coming. And when she died, I became the one thing they never expected, their worst nightmare. Before we get into this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you're not going to believe how this ends. Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in my situation. Now, let me tell you how I went from betrayed wife to boss of the century. My name is Diana, and this is the story of how I lost everything and gained so much more. 8 years. That's how long I was married to Brandon. We met in college, fell in love over cheap pizza and late-night study sessions. He was ambitious, charismatic, full of dreams. I was the steady one, the supporter, the believer. When he wanted to go to business school, I worked double shifts as a teacher to help pay for it. When he stressed about exams, I was there with coffee and encouragement. When he graduated and couldn't find a job right away, I told him to keep going, that his moment would come. And it did come. Just not the way I expected. Brandon landed a position at Westbrook Luxury Properties, this massive real estate empire worth hundreds of millions. His boss was Helen Westbrook, a 55-year-old billionaire widow who'd taken over the company after her husband died. I remember the day Brandon came home with the news. He was so excited, spinning me around our tiny kitchen, talking about how this was his big break. I was proud of him. So proud. I thought we were finally going to have the life we'd been working toward. Those first few months were good. Brandon was energized, motivated. He'd come home and tell me about these huge deals, about how Helen was teaching him everything, how she saw potential in him. Helen Westbrook was this elegant, powerful woman. No kids, never remarried after her husband passed. She'd built this empire and ran it with an iron fist. Brandon admired her. And honestly, so did I. She was everything I thought a successful woman should be. But then things started changing. Slowly, at first. Brandon began working late. Like really late. He'd text me at 9, 10 at night saying he was still at the office. Then came the business trips, weekend conferences, dinners with clients that I was never invited to. He stopped asking about my day, stopped touching me the way he used to. We'd be sitting on the couch watching TV, and it felt like there was an ocean between us. I started noticing other things too. Designer clothes appearing in his closet, shirts I'd never seen before, a new watch that looked like it cost more than our mortgage. And the smell. God, the smell. Whenever he came home late, he smelled like perfume. Not my perfume. Something expensive. Something that whispered money and power. I tried to talk to him about it. I'd ask if everything was okay, if we were okay. He'd brush me off, say I was being paranoid, that he was just stressed with work. He'd say, "This is what success looks like, Diana. I thought you'd be happy for me." And I felt guilty, like I was being the nagging wife, the insecure one. So I stayed quiet. I swallowed my doubts and tried to be supportive. But you know what they say about intuition, right? It's usually right. One day, I was doing laundry and found a hotel receipt in his pants pocket. From the Four Seasons, downtown. Date stamped from 2 nights before, when he'd told me he was working late at the office. My hands shook as I held that piece of paper. I went through his wallet while he was in the shower. Found another receipt. And another. Jewelry from Tiffany's. Flowers from some exclusive boutique. None of it ever made it home to me. I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. It was a Thursday evening. He said he had a late meeting. I called in sick to work and sat in my car outside his office building. At 7:30, he walked out. But he wasn't alone. Helen Westbrook was with him. They got into her car, this sleek black Mercedes, and I followed them to this restaurant I couldn't even afford to look at. Through the window, I watched them. The way he leaned in close to her. The way she touched his hand across the table. The way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. I'd never seen him look at me like that. Not even in the beginning. I sat in my car and cried for an hour before I could drive home. When Brandon walked in that night, smelling like her perfume, I was waiting. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just asked him one question. How long? You know what's funny? He didn't even try to deny it. He just sighed, like I'd caught him eating cookies before dinner, or something. 6 months, he said. 6 months. Half a year of lying to my face. Half a year of sleeping next to me while he was with her. I asked him why. And that's when he really broke me. He said, Helen makes me feel alive, Diana. She gets me. She can give me the life I deserve. You're just ordinary. You were good for the struggling years, but I need more now. I need someone who matches my ambition. He talked about me like I was a starter apartment he'd outgrown, like I was something to be upgraded from. He packed a bag that same night, didn't even sleep on the couch, just walked out the door and never looked back. I found out later he'd moved into Helen's penthouse. They got married 3 months later, while our divorce wasn't even finalized yet. Those next few months were the darkest of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd go to work and teach my kindergarten class with a smile on my face, then come home and fall apart. Brandon's lawyer was vicious. They wanted to give me almost nothing in the divorce. Claimed I hadn't contributed to his success. Claimed that everything he'd achieved was his own doing. Like I hadn't worked 2 jobs to put him through school. Like I hadn't supported him when nobody else believed in him. I felt invisible. Worthless. Like maybe Brandon was right. Maybe I was just ordinary. Maybe I wasn't enough. And then I got the phone call that changed everything. It was 3 months after Brandon left. I was grading papers on a Sunday afternoon when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. It was Helen's personal assistant. She said Helen wanted to meet with me. Alone. At a private restaurant downtown. Tuesday at noon. I didn't understand. Why would Helen Westbrook want to meet with me? Was she going to gloat? Rub it in my face? Tell me to back off on the divorce settlement? I was angry, confused, but also curious. So I said yes. That Tuesday, I walked into the restaurant like I was walking into battle. But when I saw Helen, I almost didn't recognize her. This woman who'd always looked so powerful, so untouchable, she looked small, fragile, sick. She stood up when she saw me, and I could see how much effort it took. We sat down, and for a long moment, we just looked at each other. Then she said, "Thank you for coming. I know you have every reason to hate me." I didn't know what to say. So I just waited. Helen took a breath and told me the truth. She was dying. Stage 4 cancer. The doctors gave her weeks, maybe a month. She said she needed me to hear her out, even though she knew she didn't deserve my time. She told me that after her husband died 5 years ago, she'd been lonely, lost. And when Brandon started paying attention to her, when he made her feel seen and desired, she'd fallen for it. I was foolish, she said, a foolish old woman who wanted to feel young again. But then she said something that surprised me. She told me that after about 2 months of being with Brandon, she started seeing through him. She realized he didn't love her. He loved what she could give him, the money, the power, the lifestyle. She said he'd talk about his plans for when he inherited the company, how he'd expand it, change it. He talked like she was already dead, like she was just an obstacle between him and his fortune. Helen looked me straight in the eye and said, "He's a user, Diana, a social climber, and I made a terrible mistake encouraging him to leave you." I still didn't understand why she was telling me all this. And then she explained. She had no family, no children, no one to leave her empire to. She'd been thinking about what to do with everything she'd built. At first, she'd considered leaving it to charity, but then she'd done something I never expected. She'd looked into me, researched me, found articles about the community garden I'd started at my school, read about the after-school program I ran for kids whose parents worked late. She'd seen me at parent-teacher conferences, at neighborhood meetings. She'd been watching me, trying to understand what kind of person I was. "You have something Brandon will never have," Helen said. "Character. Heart. You know how to build people up instead of using them as stepping stones." Then she told me what she'd done. She'd changed her will. I was going to inherit 60% of Westbrook luxury properties. The rest would go to charity and her longtime employees. Brandon would get nothing. She'd made him sign a prenuptial agreement before they got married, something he'd done without question because he was so confident he'd inherit everything anyway. I couldn't process it. I thought it was a joke, or a trick, or maybe I'd actually lost my mind. I asked her why. Why me? Why would she give everything to a stranger? Helen reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was weak, but steady. She said, "Because you supported a man who didn't deserve you. You gave everything and asked for nothing. Now let me give you what you've earned. Promise me you'll learn the business. Promise me you'll honor what my husband and I built. Promise me you won't let Brandon destroy it." I promised. What else could I do? 2 weeks later, Helen died. It was peaceful, they said, in her sleep. The will reading was scheduled for the following week. Brandon showed up in a custom suit, strutting around like he owned the place. He'd brought 2 lawyers. He was already talking about his plans for the company, about expansions and new ventures. He looked right through me like I wasn't even there, just like he'd done for the last months of our marriage. The lawyer started reading the will. I watched Brandon's face. At first, he was smiling, then confused. Then the color drained from his face. His lawyer started whispering frantically to him. Brandon stood up and started shouting, "This is fraud. She wasn't in her right mind. I'm her husband. This is my company." Security had to escort him out. He was screaming the whole way, threatening lawsuits, saying he'd destroy me. And I just sat there, numb, trying to understand that I'd just inherited an $800 million company. The next few months were overwhelming. Helen's executive team took me under their wing. They taught me everything about real estate, about contracts, about negotiations. And you know what? I was good at it. Really good. All those years of teaching, of understanding people, of mediating between parents and kids, it all translated. I could read people, I knew when someone was genuine and when they were playing games. I cared about creating homes, not just making deals. The company didn't just survive under my leadership, it thrived. I shifted our focus to include affordable housing projects, created programs for first-time homebuyers, set up a scholarship fund in Helen's name for kids from low-income families. The old guard thought I was crazy, that I'd tank the profits. But our revenue grew by 30% in 6 months. Turns out, when you actually care about people, they want to do business with you. Brandon tried to sue. Multiple times, every lawsuit got thrown out. The prenup was ironclad. He had no claim to anything. I heard through the grapevine that he'd burned through his savings trying to fight me in court, that he couldn't get a job because word had spread about what he'd done, that he was broke. Then one day, my assistant told me someone was here to see me. No appointment, said it was urgent. And in walked Brandon. He looked terrible. Cheap suit, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. He stood in front of my desk, Helen's old desk, now mine, and I could see how much it hurt him to be there. He asked for a job, any job, said he'd work in the mailroom if he had to. Then he tried a different approach, told me he'd made a mistake, that he still loved me, that we could start over, that he'd been stupid and greedy and he was sorry. He actually had tears in his eyes. I let him finish. Then I leaned back in my chair and looked at him, really looked at him, and I realized I didn't feel anything. No anger, no satisfaction, nothing. He was just a stranger who'd once meant something to me. I said, "You told me I was ordinary, and you were right. I was ordinary enough to stand by you when you had nothing. Ordinary enough to believe in you when nobody else did. Ordinary enough to love you when you were broke and scared. But you know what? Ordinary people have something you'll never have. Character, loyalty, a soul." I called security, had them escort him out. Then I had my lawyer send him a check, $50,000, the final divorce settlement. More than he deserved, but I wanted to close that chapter completely. I didn't want him to have any excuse to contact me ever again. That was 6 months ago. Today, I'm sitting in my office on the 40th floor, looking out over the city. The company has grown beyond anything I imagined. We've expanded into 3 new cities. We've built affordable housing for hundreds of families. We've created jobs and opportunities. And me? I'm happy, truly happy. Not because I have money or power, but because I found myself in all of this. I found my voice, my strength, my purpose. Helen gave me more than a company. She gave me a second chance. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And Brandon? He lost everything chasing money and status. He traded a partner for a bank account and ended up with neither. People ask me if I got revenge. But this wasn't revenge. This was justice. This was the universe correcting itself. They say the best revenge is success. But I think the best revenge is becoming so complete in yourself that you forget why you wanted revenge in the first place. So that's my story. The husband who dumped me for a billionaire ended up with nothing, while I got everything. Not just the money, but my power, my voice, my life back. If this story taught you something, hit that like button. Subscribe, because I've got more stories that'll blow your mind. And comment below. Have you ever had someone underestimate you? Tell me about it. Remember, never let anyone make you feel small. Sometimes the people who count you out are just making room for your glow up. I'm Diana, and I'll see you in the next one.